Damn it. I should have known better than to trust a smile that perfect. My name's Lauren. I used to think I had the perfect marriage, the perfect life. But the night I followed my husband down the hall and heard him whisper, "She still doesn't suspect a thing," everything shattered. What I uncovered next? Let's just say it wasn't just infidelity. There was a time when just hearing my name from Ethan's lips made my entire world pause. "Laura," he'd whisper each morning, his voice still laced with sleep, soft as the light that filtered through our bedroom curtains. It didn't matter how many years we'd been married, there was still a quiet thrill in the way he said it, as if I were still his first choice, his only choice. I'd turn toward him and there he'd be, smiling that boyish smile, brushing a strand of hair off my face like it was some sacred ritual. "I made your coffee," he'd say. "Vanilla almond milk, just how you like it." "Thank you." I'd reply, my voice warm, still drowsy, and for a long time I believed that was our rhythm. Simple, sweet, dependable. A soft-spoken kind of love that didn't shout, didn't grandstand, but wrapped around me like a favorite sweater. At night he'd come home smelling like cedar wood and office paper, kiss my forehead and mutter something ridiculous like, "I survived another war with management." I'd smile, roll my eyes and pretend to scold him. We'd eat dinner together, talk about nothing and everything. Life was quiet, but I thought quiet meant safe. Our apartment wasn't grand, but it was ours. The framed photos lining the hallway, our wedding, our first trip to Rome, his arm around me at a beach bonfire, each told a story I thought was true. I believed in the man behind those smiles. I believed in us. Sure, there were cracks, but aren't there always? He'd been coming home later lately, sometimes with no explanation, sometimes with one that didn't quite add up. "Long meeting ran over," he'd shrug. "At 11 p.m., I'd press. "You know how deadlines are," he'd deflect, pressing a quick kiss to my cheek. I told myself not to be that woman, the suspicious wife, the anxious overthinker. I didn't want to question every shadow on his face or every time he put his phone screen down on the table. But sometimes, I did. Is he stressed? Is it work? Is it me? There were nights I lay awake longer than I admitted, staring at the ceiling, while his breathing evened out beside me. I'd reach for his hand under the blanket and find it already turned away. Still, I brushed the unease aside. After all, marriages go through seasons, don't they? Maybe this was just a cold snap before spring. One evening, as we stood in the kitchen doing dishes side by side, I caught him watching me. His gaze lingered, not with love, but calculation. Like he was memorizing something he wasn't sure he'd see again. "Something on my face?" I asked, smiling to lighten the moment. He blinked, then forced a smile. "Nah. You look peaceful." It was such a strange thing to say, and it should have stuck with me longer. But I laughed it off, rinsed a plate, and returned to the rhythm. Now, I wish I had looked closer. That night, I woke up alone. The bed beside me was cold, the sheets barely rumpled. Ethan was gone. My first thought was innocent. Maybe he's in the bathroom, or downstairs getting water. I glanced at the clock. 2:47 a.m. The silence in our home was heavy, unusual. I reached out instinctively, but there was only space. Then I heard it. A whisper. Not just a whisper, his voice. Careful, measured, coming from the hallway. I sat up, heart suddenly racing. Why was he whispering in the middle of the night? And then I heard the words that twisted the calm into dread. "She still doesn't suspect anything." The words didn't belong in my home. They didn't belong to my husband. Not the Ethan I knew. Not the Ethan who kissed my forehead every morning and laughed too loudly at his own bad jokes. But the voice was unmistakably his. Calm, low, calculated. I froze. My body refused to move, like every muscle had turned to ice beneath my skin. I blinked, waiting, hoping I'd imagined it, that maybe the remnants of a dream were still clinging to me. But then he spoke again, quieter this time. "Yeah, it's all going as planned." Planned? What plan? And who was he talking to? A strange pressure gripped my chest, like my ribs were closing in around my heart. I sat up slowly, pushing the covers back, my bare feet meeting the cold wooden floor. Every creak beneath me felt amplified, like the house itself was holding its breath. I crept to the door, careful not to let it groan open too far. The hallway was dim, only a sliver of light bleeding from the crack beneath his office door. That room, the one place he never liked me entering without knocking. He'd always brushed it off as just work stuff you'd find boring. I stepped closer, Each footstep, a war between hesitation and need. I didn't want to hear more, but I had to. I pressed my back to the wall beside the door, my ears straining. The air felt thick, like something intangible was pressing against my skin. Already transferred it, Ethan murmured. Just waiting on the last piece. Transferred what? What last piece? Why does this feel like the ground beneath my life is about to collapse? I stood there, gripping the corner of the wall until my knuckles turned white, my breath shallow and soundless. For a moment, I wished I could go back, just crawl into bed, pull the covers over my head, and pretend I'd heard nothing. But something deep inside me whispered back, "You already know this doesn't feel right. You've known for a while now." Footsteps. Panic rose like a wave. I scrambled back to the bedroom, my heartbeat thundering in my ears. I barely managed to slide under the blanket before the floorboard creaked near the doorway. The knob turned. The door opened slowly. I kept my eyes shut, feigning sleep, even as my chest heaved against the silence. The mattress dipped beside me. I could feel his warmth return, but it no longer comforted. It suffocated. He exhaled, long, easy, unbothered, as if nothing had happened, as if he hadn't just shattered the foundation of everything I believed in. I lay still, my face turned away, but my mind spun with questions I couldn't begin to answer. Who was he talking to? What had he transferred? And what exactly was he planning that I wasn't supposed to suspect? When the alarm clock rang the next morning, Ethan was already up. The smell of fresh coffee wafted into the room, but it didn't warm me like it usually did. It felt scripted. He walked in a few minutes later, holding a mug. Morning, sleepyhead. I sat up slowly, forcing a small smile. Thanks. You okay? He asked, settling beside me on the edge of the bed. I studied his face. Nothing looked different, his usual unshaven jawline, the curve of his lips. But something was missing. Or maybe something had been added, a new layer I hadn't noticed before. Cold calculation behind soft eyes. Yeah, just had trouble sleeping, I said, wrapping my hands around the mug as if it could anchor me. You worry too much, he said with a chuckle, kissing my temple. Everything's fine, but everything was not fine. Because this time, my name didn't sound like a promise, it sounded like a warning. That day, the coffee tasted different. Maybe it was just me, or maybe it was the lie sitting across from me, sipping from his own cup like the night before hadn't happened. Ethan was calm. Too calm. His eyes never lingered too long on mine, but they flicked toward me often. Watchful, like he was studying a test subject, gauging if the dose had worked. And I smiled. I nodded. I played my part. Because whatever he was hiding, I needed to know more before I made a move. I couldn't afford to be reckless. After he left for work, I sat at the kitchen table, the mug still warm in my hands. My phone lay beside it, black screen glowing faintly with my reflection. I stared at myself for a moment. Messy hair, tired eyes, the tiniest flicker of disbelief still lingering behind them. Was I really doing this? Yes, because the voice last night still echoed in my mind. She still doesn't suspect anything. Well, now I did. My fingers trembled as I opened the banking app, something I rarely touched. Ethan had always handled the finances, and I'd let him. It wasn't out of helplessness, it was trust. But now that trust felt like something I'd handed over too easily, too blindly. The screen loaded. My stomach dropped. $500 withdrawn here, $1,000 there, another $2,000 a week ago. Not huge amounts, but over 3 months? It added up. And none of it made sense. No descriptions, no linked bills, no transfers into savings, just gone. I scrolled back, trying to steady my breathing. Why didn't I look sooner? How long had this been going on right under my nose? The door clicked open. I nearly jumped out of my skin, slamming my phone face down against the counter, but it was just Ethan. He'd forgotten his laptop. He paused in the doorway, eyebrows raised. You're up early. I forced a chuckle. Couldn't sleep, just checking some things. His eyes flicked to the phone. Finances? I murmured, trying not to sound defensive. He stepped closer, grabbing the laptop from the table. Everything okay? I think so. I lied. He nodded, giving me a quick kiss on the forehead before heading back out. But before he reached the door, he turned back. Hey, you trust me, right? I blinked. What? His smile didn't reach his eyes. Just, in general. I stared at him for a moment. I thought about the voice in the dark. The mystery withdrawals, the secrecy. I always have, I said softly, but I didn't say still do. When the door shut behind him, I sat down hard. My fingers trembled as I picked up the phone again. I didn't even know where to begin. I thought about calling the bank. But what would I say? "Hi, I think my husband is plotting something behind my back. Could you confirm that?" No, I needed help. Someone who knew what to look for. Someone I could trust absolutely. So I called Anna. She answered on the second ring, her voice still groggy. "Laura? It's 8:30, what's going on?" My voice broke. "I need to ask you something, and I need you to believe me even if it sounds crazy." "Try me," she said, instantly alert. I told her everything, the whispers, the withdrawals, the feeling that something was happening behind the curtain of our marriage, the strange message I glimpsed once on Ethan's phone. Just make sure she stays in the dark. Silence on the other end. Then quietly Anna said, "Laura, you need to move everything, immediately." "Move everything?" "Your accounts. Any assets in your name. I'll help you set up a trust. Don't say a word to Ethan yet. Not until you're protected." "But won't that make it worse?" I whispered. "Only if you wait too long," she said. I stared at the sunlight hitting the counter, the dust dancing like tiny ghosts in the air. I thought I had time, but this wasn't just a bad feeling anymore. This was the beginning of a war I never asked for. And I needed to be ready. It happened on a Thursday. The kind of gray, unremarkable day where nothing should go wrong, and yet everything did. Ethan came home earlier than usual. Too early. He walked into the apartment with the same calm mask he always wore, but there was something tighter in his jaw, something too deliberate in the way he set his keys down on the table. "Can we talk?" he asked, his tone almost gentle. "Sure," I said, my voice level. I'd been waiting. He sat across from me at the kitchen table, a man who believed he still held all the power. In his hands he placed a thick manila envelope. He pushed it toward me, fingertips lingering. "What's this?" I asked, though I already knew. He inhaled slowly like he was rehearsing lines. "Laura, I think we both know this isn't working anymore. We've grown apart, we don't want the same things." My fingers grazed the envelope. "So this is a divorce," he said simply. "Amicable, fair." I stared at him for a long moment. Part of me still wanted to scream, to cry, to beg for an explanation. Why now? Why like this? Was it ever real? But instead I exhaled calmly. "Before we talk about this, there's something you should know." Ethan blinked, clearly thrown off. "Okay?" I slid the envelope back to him. "I've already moved all my assets, the apartment, the investments, the accounts. Everything is protected under my name in a private trust." For a second, just a flicker, his expression cracked. A muscle in his cheek twitched. His hand recoiled slightly from the envelope. The mask slipped, just for a breath. "What?" he asked, the word clipped. "You can't touch a cent of it, Ethan." My voice didn't rise, didn't falter. It was sharp, precise. "Not anymore." His smile reappeared, thin and strained. "Laura, this doesn't have to get messy." "Oh, I agree," I said, standing. "But you made it messy the moment you started plotting behind my back. The midnight whispers, the money withdrawals, that message from Iliamaro." His eyes narrowed. "You went through my phone?" I tilted my head. "You left it out." I only needed to read 2 lines to know something was wrong. He stood slowly now too, his hands clenched at his sides. "You're making a mistake." "No," I replied, stepping closer, voice low and controlled. "The mistake was thinking I wouldn't notice, that I wouldn't fight back." A long silence. The room felt heavy, like something ancient and cruel had settled in the space between us. He leaned in, voice tight. "You don't know who you're messing with." I smiled. Not a cruel smile. Not even a bitter one. Just the kind that comes when truth finally pierces illusion. "No, Ethan, you don't know who you were messing with." He stared at me, jaw tight, fury barely veiled behind his eyes. I could see it clearly now. The man who'd spent months constructing a trap around me, only to find himself caught in one. Without another word, he grabbed the envelope and turned away. The door slammed behind him like a gunshot. I stood in the silence that followed, my heart pounding, not with fear but with something else. Relief. Victory. And the terrifying calm of knowing this wasn't the end. This was just the opening round. 3 days. That's how long the silence lasted after Ethan slammed the door. 3 days of eerie calm. No texts, no phone calls, no angry knocks in the middle of the night. And for a moment, I let myself believe maybe that was it. Maybe he'd retreat, lick his wounds, and leave me be. But Ethan never let go of anything quietly. But instead, I exhaled calmly. "Before we talk about this, there's something you should know." Ethan blinked, clearly thrown off. Okay? I slid the envelope back to him. I've already moved all my assets, the apartment, the investments, the accounts, everything is protected under my name in a private trust. For a second, just a flicker, his expression cracked. A muscle in his cheek twitched. His hand recoiled slightly from the envelope. The mask slipped, just for a breath. What? He asked, the word clipped. You can't touch a cent of it, Ethan. My voice didn't rise, didn't falter. It was sharp, precise. Not anymore. His smile reappeared, thin and strained. Laura, this doesn't have to get messy. Oh, I agree, I said, standing. But you made it messy the moment you started plotting behind my back. The midnight whispers. The money withdrawals. That message from Ilya Morrow. His eyes narrowed. You went through my phone? I tilted my head. You left it out. I only needed to read 2 lines to know something was wrong. He stood slowly now too, his hands clenched at his sides. You're making a mistake. No, I replied, stepping closer, voice low and controlled. The mistake was thinking I wouldn't notice, that I wouldn't fight back. A long silence. The room felt heavy, like something ancient and cruel had settled in the space between us. He leaned in, voice tight. You don't know who you're messing with, I smiled. Not a cruel smile, not even a bitter one, just the kind that comes when truth finally pierces illusion. No, Ethan, you don't know who you were messing with. He stared at me, jaw tight, fury barely veiled behind his eyes. I could see it clearly now, the man who'd spent months constructing a trap around me, only to find himself caught in one. Without another word, he grabbed the envelope and turned away. The door slammed behind him like a gunshot. I stood in the silence that followed. My heart pounding, not with fear, but with something else. Relief. Victory. And the terrifying calm of knowing this wasn't the end, this was just the opening round. 3 days. That's how long the silence lasted after Ethan slammed the door. 3 days of eerie calm. No texts, no phone calls, no angry knocks in the middle of the night, and for a moment I let myself believe maybe that was it. Maybe he'd retreat, lick his wounds and leave me be. But Ethan never let go of anything quietly. And I should have known, silence was only the pause before the storm. On the 4th morning, a thick envelope arrived, certified mail. From Reynolds & Co., attorneys at law. I sat on the couch with it in my lap for nearly 20 minutes, just staring. My name typed neatly on the front, my stomach twisted. When I finally opened it, I didn't even finish the first page before bile rose in my throat. He was suing me, claiming I'd embezzled money from our joint accounts. Claiming I had secretly moved funds to avoid equitable division of assets, claiming he had sacrificed his career for our marriage and now deserved spousal support. I stared at the pages, each sentence a fresh betrayal, crafted with precision and venom, and at the bottom of page 3, one name sent a chill through my blood. Co-plaintiff. Ilya Mororo. I froze. Ilya. The name from the message. The man behind the shadows. I called Anna immediately, voice shaking. He's suing me. He's dragging Ilya into this. There was a pause. Then her voice, sharp, steady. Laura, send me everything now. An hour later I was sitting in her office, the documents spread across her desk like a battlefield map. He's trying to paint you as a criminal, she said, scanning the fine print. Ilya's name, I've heard it before, fraud consultant. Well known for faking financial records, but no one's been able to pin him down. My hands trembled as I held the copy of the lawsuit. Can he actually do this? Can he win? Anna looked up at me. Her expression was calm, but her eyes burned with fire. Not if we move fast, and not if he's as sloppy as I think he is. We spent hours combing through records, checking dates, rereading old emails. Anna pulled in a forensic accountant, someone she trusted. I signed confidentiality forms, handed over everything. Passwords, statements, screenshots. If he faked anything, Anna said, we'll find it. But despite the plan, despite the logic, fear still clung to me like damp clothes. What if the court believes him? What if my career gets pulled into this? What if this doesn't end? That night, back home alone, I stood in front of the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. Not because I was broken, but because I wasn't. I was still standing, still fighting, still here. The next afternoon Anna called. He made a mistake. I nearly dropped my phone. What? His documents. The transactions he says you made? They're timestamped 2 months before your new trust account even existed. My jaw dropped. So? They forged them, Laura, and they didn't even check the dates. Relief swept over me like a flood. I sank into my chair, a hand over my chest. Anna's voice sharpened. We're filing a countersuit. Fraud, defamation, submission of false evidence. Suddenly I could breathe again. And for the first time in weeks, the air didn't taste like fear. It tasted like fire. He came for my money. He came for my name. Now I was coming for everything he used to think he controlled. Courtroom lighting is never kind. It flattens everything. Faces, voices, truths. It reveals who's really composed and who's just pretending to be. Ethan sat across from me in a dark suit, his tie the same burgundy shade he wore on our wedding day. A cruel irony. His posture was straight, practiced, but his hands, gripping the edge of the desk, betrayed him. His knuckles were white, fingertips pressed so hard I thought the wood might splinter. He still thought he could win. He hadn't seen the evidence. The judge flipped through the folders in front of him, expression unreadable. Anna sat beside me, poised, silent, a lioness waiting for the right moment to strike. Miss Thompson's legal counsel has submitted a rebuttal, the judge said, accompanied by a forensic analysis of the financial records provided by Mr. Reynolds and his associate, Mr. Maroro. He paused. In reviewing the documentation, the court finds multiple inconsistencies, most notably that the alleged transfers from Ms. Thompson occurred 2 months before her trust account was officially opened. I saw it. The flicker. Ethan's head tilted slightly, his jaw tightened, his attorney's hand twitched toward his briefcase. Anna rose slowly. Your Honor, we also have time-stamped server logs from the bank showing the account's activation date, along with metadata proving that the documents submitted by the plaintiff were altered post-creation. The judge nodded, flipping to the marked page. This court takes the deliberate submission of forged evidence very seriously. I held my breath. For the first time since all this began, I felt the scales tip. Ethan's attorney stood, clearly flustered. Your Honor, there may have been a clerical error. Clerical error? Anna's voice sliced through the air like glass. Do clerical errors come with altered metadata and backdated logs? Or with a co-plaintiff who's been named in 3 separate fraud investigations? The courtroom murmured. I saw Ethan's mouth twitch, but no sound came out. The judge raised his hand. Silence. A beat passed. Due to the submission of falsified evidence and lack of credible grounds, the court hereby dismisses all claims made by Mr. Reynolds. My lungs finally let go, but the judge wasn't done. In addition, an investigation into the actions of Mr. Reynolds and Mr. Maroro will be opened immediately. This includes charges of defamation, financial fraud, and perjury. Ethan blinked. His attorney turned pale. For a moment the room was frozen, like time itself had inhaled and refused to exhale. Then the gavel struck. Court is adjourned. I didn't move at first. I just watched Ethan as the weight of it all hit him. His shoulders slumped, his mask cracked. He looked at me, and for the first time in months, I didn't look away. Anna leaned in, whispering, That's checkmate. I stood, slowly gathering my things. My hands were steady, my heartbeat was quiet. As we stepped out into the hallway, Ethan followed, his voice low, tight with fury. You think this is over? I turned calm. No, I think you're over. His lips curled, but he didn't reply. He didn't have to. His silence screamed the truth. He'd lost, and he knew it. Back in Anna's office later that day, she poured 2 glasses of wine and handed me one without a word. I sat down, the exhaustion finally catching up to me. To the woman who dismantled a lie without raising her voice, she said. I clinked my glass against hers. The wine was dry, bold, bittersweet, like victory earned the hard way, like justice. It didn't happen overnight, but piece by piece the world Ethan had built, his curated image, his polished reputation, his entitled confidence, started to collapse. The company he worked for issued a quiet internal investigation after whispers of the court case began to spread. Ilya Maroro's name had already come up in another financial scandal 3 states away, and now Ethan's was attached to it too. Within a week, Ethan was suspended. Within a month, terminated. Quietly, but not silently. I heard through someone at his firm that he'd tried to frame it as a sabbatical. But it's hard to take a sabbatical when you're selling your sports car to cover legal fees. His beloved apartment, the bachelor pad fantasy he'd probably planned to move into post-divorce, was listed on the market. I saw the photos online, empty rooms, clean lines, a life never lived. Meanwhile, I was still in the home we once shared, the apartment he thought he could steal from under me. But now it was mine. entirely mine. I redecorated. Nothing drastic. Just changes. Lighter curtains, plants in the windows, new sheets that smelled like lavender instead of memories. For the first time in months, I could sleep with the lights off. For the first time in years, I woke up not wondering who I was waking up next to. Then came the final blow. Anna called with the voice she reserved for triumphs that didn't need to be loud. Ethan's lawyer reached out, she said. They want to settle, quietly, no appeals, no more games. I paused. What's the offer? They're conceding on every point, and withdrawing the spousal support request. I let the silence breathe before I answered. Decline. Let the court ruling stand. Let it be public record. He wanted a war. He's gonna live in the ashes of it. Anna chuckled, low and warm. That's my girl. That evening, I sat on my balcony with a glass of wine, the city lights pulsing gently beneath a soft October sky. The quiet no longer scared me. It soothed me. The absence of chaos had become a kind of music. My phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. This isn't over. I stared at the words. Then I blocked the number without hesitation. It was over. Not because he said so, not even because the court did, but because I chose it to be. The next day I walked into work with my head high. The rumors had already faded, thanks to Anna's swift cease and desist letters and a public statement from our firm's legal team confirming my full exoneration. Rachel, my assistant, met me at the elevator. You look different, she said. I feel different, I replied. And I meant it. That weekend, Anna insisted we celebrate properly. She booked a rooftop dinner, string lights overhead, close friends gathered, and laughter that didn't feel forced for the first time in ages. As I raised my glass, Beatrice leaned over with a smile. So, how does it feel, knowing he has nothing left? I set my glass down gently, looked out at the skyline, glowing and infinite. It doesn't feel like revenge, I said softly. It feels like freedom, like I took back every part of myself he tried to chip away. And for once, that answer was enough. No more courtroom drama, no more battles, just the sound of laughter, clinking glasses, and the quiet rhythm of a life finally my own. There are betrayals that scream. Loud, violent, obvious. And then there are the quiet ones. The ones that creep into your life dressed as routine, camouflaged behind kisses, coffee, and casual smiles. Ethan's betrayal was the quiet kind, the kind that teaches you how dangerous silence can be. I used to believe that trust meant giving everything, that love was measured in how much you were willing to surrender. But surrendering without boundaries isn't love, it's erasure. And that's what I was doing for years, slowly letting go of pieces of myself until I couldn't remember where I ended and Ethan began. But not anymore. Because now I know. Real love doesn't require blind trust. It respects your voice. It needs your clarity. And it never, ever demands that you live in the dark to keep someone else comfortable. The nights I spent crying in silence are over. The days I questioned my worth because someone I loved turned out to be a stranger in disguise. Those are behind me. Yes, I still carry scars. But scars are not weakness. They are proof that I bled, I broke, and I rebuilt. I rebuilt a woman who is no longer afraid to read the fine print, who no longer waits for someone else to decide if she's enough, who now knows how to say no without guilt, and yes to herself without apology. Would I do it all again? No. Would I want someone else to live through it? Absolutely not. But do I regret surviving it? Never. Because somewhere in the wreckage Ethan left behind, I found something he never expected me to. Myself. To the woman reading this who feels something is off, listen to that voice. To the one who feels like she's unraveling just to keep peace, stop pulling yourself apart to fit inside someone else's plan. And to the woman who thinks she won't survive the betrayal she just discovered, I see you. I was you. And you will rise. Because the greatest revenge isn't destruction, it's resurrection. It's waking up one day and realizing the person who tried to break you only made you stronger, wiser, harder to fool, and impossible to control. That's the story I want remembered. Not the story of a woman who was almost ruined, but the story of a woman who reclaimed everything. Laura's story may have started with whispers in the dark, but it ended in her own voice, clear, unshaken, and free. What did you take away from her journey? Leave your thoughts in the comments, and follow for more true stories of resilience, justice, and the power of taking your life back.